We are moving on to a new session on resources in Primavera P6. Resource management is one of the most important and challenging topics in project planning. Today, we cover creating resources, resources window and resource assignment. Let's open the project called Creating Resource. We'll use it to demonstrate our topic. There are several ways to open the resources window in Primavera P6. One method is by clicking the resources icon in the left navigation pane. You can also access it from the Enterprise menu at the top by selecting Resources. The Resources window is where we create and manage all the resources that will be assigned to our project activities. Before assigning resources to any activity, we must first create them in the Resources dictionary. Once the resources are created, they become available for assignment throughout the project. For your information, Resources window is the name of the interface where you create, edit, and manage resources. Resource Dictionary is the collection or database of all resources stored in Primavera P6. Now, we can create resources by clicking the plus icon in the Resource window. A new resource wizard will appear. First, we are going to create a resource hierarchy. Enter Training as the resource ID and Training P6 as the resource name. Then, click Next and Finish. We have now created the top-level resource hierarchy by arranging with arrow keys in the right pane. Next, we will create the major resource categories under this hierarchy. To create a new resource, click the plus icon again. The new resource wizard will open. Enter a unique resource ID, for example 001, and set the resource name as Engineer, Design. Primavera P6 provides three resource types: labor, non-labor, material. The labor category includes both direct and indirect manpower resources. Labor resources do not require a unit of measure. The default unit is time, such as hours or days. Material resources, on the other hand, can have different units of measure, such as each, tons, cubic yards, etc. We will discuss the unit of measure feature in detail in upcoming session. Since the design engineer is a manpower resource, select labor as the resource type. Next, enter the price per unit, default units per time, and maximum units per time in this wizard. However, we will configure these settings using another method, explain later in this session. So you can learn both method. If required, you can also enter the other details. Finally, you can assign the appropriate role for this resource. Click Next. You can assign a role by clicking the Assign option. Currently, a design engineer role has already been created. You can use the filter option to display all the available roles. For now, we are not going to assign any role. There are two methods available to assign resources, which we will demonstrate later. If you want to create a new resource calendar or use an existing one, you can do so at this stage. You can also edit an existing calendar if required. Click Next. Here, you can enable the Auto Compute Actuals option for the resource. We will keep the default office calendar for now. We will discuss this option in detail in a later session so that you can understand its purpose more clearly. Finally, click Next, and then Finish. The resource has now been created successfully. Now, let's understand the bottom layout of the Resource Details window. In the General tab, you can view and edit the resource ID, resource name, employee ID, title, email address, phone number, such basic information. If required, you can modify any of these details. There is a dedicated session for codes we will discuss there. You can also define the resource type as labor, non-labor, or material. This option is available in both the top layout and the bottom layout. You can change the currency and make appropriate overtime factor if required. You can assign a calendar to the resource from this window. If necessary, you can change the resource calendar here. Next is Default Units Time, which defines the default working units for the resource. For this example, we are setting it to 10 hours per day. You will also find the Auto Compute Actuals option. This can be enabled or disabled depending on your project requirements. We will explain its purpose and usage in this session. In the Units and Prices tab, you can define the price unit and the maximum units time. Maximum units time specifies the maximum availability of the resource. For example, 100 hours means the resource is available 100 hours for assignment. You can also define the price unit. In this example, we are setting the resource rate to $15 per hour. Next, open the Roles tab. Here, we are assigning the role Design Engineer, which we created earlier. You can also specify the proficiency level. In this example, we are selecting Level 4, Proficient. The Notes tab allows you to enter any additional information about the resource by clicking Modify. Finally, the User-Defined Fields, UDFs, tab is available for creating and managing custom fields. We will cover this topic in detail in a later session. Now we can assign the resource to a specific activity. Note here the role budget cost is $800. We have already created the roles, and now we are assigning the resources. Remember that a single role can have multiple resources assigned to it. We will select the resource we created earlier, while the resource cost is $1,200. This difference occurs because the resource has its own rate, for example, $15 per hour, which results in a total cost of $1,200 based on the assigned work hours. If you want Primavera P6 to use the role rate instead of the resource rate, change the rate source from resource to role. For that, add the particular column to the window, such as rate source and rate type. Once you do that, the cost changes to $800. The override option is available, but it is mainly for informational purposes and is generally not used in normal project planning. If multiple rate types are defined for the resource, such as standard, external, internal, or other rate categories, you can select the appropriate rate type according to your project requirements. To demonstrate Auto Compute Actuals, we will first enable the option at the resource level. Go to the Resources window, open the Details tab, and check the Auto Compute Actuals option. Now, let's see how it works. For your information, there are Activity Level Auto Compute option. Select the Engineer Design activity. This activity has 80 budgeted man-hours assigned. Next, go to Tools, Apply Actuals. Change the date from the 1st of July to the 16th of July, and click Apply. You can now see that 40 actual man-hours have been automatically recorded. Since the activity is in progress, half of the 80 budgeted man-hours have been consumed, and the activity status has automatically changed to started. Now, let's reset the example. Change the actual units back to 0, so the activity returns to the not started status. Then schedule the project again with the date set to the 1st of July. Next, we will disable the resource level option. Go back to the Resources window and uncheck Auto Compute Actuals. Again, go to Tools, Apply Actuals, change the date to the 16th of July, and click Apply. This time, you will notice that no actual units are updated because Auto Compute Actuals has been disabled at the resource level. Although the schedule advances to the 16th of July, the actual resource units remain unchanged. Now let's demonstrate Activity Level Auto Compute Actuals. First, add the Auto Compute Actuals column to the Activities window. Then select the Engineer Design and another activity and enable the Auto Compute Actuals checkbox for that activities and disable in resource level. Once again, go to Tools, Apply Actuals, set the date to the 16th of July, and click Apply. You can now see that 40 actual man-hours are automatically updated for the Engineer Design activity, even though the resource level option is disabled. This happens because Auto Compute Actuals is enabled specifically for this activity. Now, let's reset the schedule by changing the date back to the initial date and rescheduling the project. With that demonstration complete, we will move on to another method of updating progress in Primavera P6, which is Update Progress. For that, go to Tools, Update Progress. In the Update Progress window, you will see two main options. All highlighted activities. Selected activities. You can also control how the remaining duration should be handled during the update. First, we'll demonstrate selected activities. Change the data date to the 16th of July and click Apply. Notice that the selected activity is updated. If resources are assigned, the actual units are also updated automatically. In this example, the labor units are updated to 40 hours. Next, let's look at the Spotlight feature. By selecting a specific date range, Primavera highlights the activities that fall within that period. This feature is especially useful during project progress updates. You can move the Spotlight window left or right to focus on different periods of the schedule. Now, go back to Tools, Update Progress. Then choose all highlighted activities and click Apply. You will notice that only the highlighted activities are updated. This is another method of updating progress in Primavera P6. In practice, both Auto-Compute Actuals and Update Progress are not commonly used on most projects because actual progress is usually entered manually based on site reports. These features are mainly provided for information and can be useful when the project is progressing exactly according to the planned schedule.